Welcome to Conversations with Garmamie. This is episode 21. This is part 2 of our interview with Patricia Reynolds. She's a recently retired educator. She's also a lifelong musician, a singer-songwriter, and a member of the Elizabeth Riley Band, alongside Jen Gilbert, Carmel Withell, and Sarah Ryan.
Where'd you come from?
Where'd you come from?
Where you been?
Where you been?
How'd you get here?
How'd you get
Who
here?
let you in?
Who let you in?
That's the Elizabeth Riley Band, and that song is called Who Let You In off their album Felt Through the Bone. This album is available on iTunes. Check out their website for more information, www.elizabethriley.com. That's all one word, elizabethriley.com. Links to their website and music videos are available in the show description. So let's hear from Patricia.
That experience was teaching up in northern Quebec for all that time, and realizing, having seen people come back, including family members from working abroad for many years and coming back and having a culture shock. You have culture shock when you go, and if you're there long enough to enculturate, you have culture shock when you come back. And
Reverse culture shock.
Yeah. And going to school seems a really good avenue for reintegrating, learn some new skills, and reintegrate in a house of learning as opposed to a job or that type of thing. So my brother had a friend who did applied language studies at Carleton, and when I said, I'm going to go to school when I come back, I wonder what I should study, my brother put me in touch with this person who said applied language studies would probably be a really good platform for reviewing linguistically, sociolinguistically, what the educational experience was, why minorities, why Native children have so much historic and current trouble in schools, etc. So I went, I'll apply to Carleton, and fortunately got in. So you have to understand, Jeffrey grew up in a sandbox in a village where everyone knew who he was, and that was the scariest thing to me, was coming down here, living in an apartment somewhere and having to go to the park every day with my son, right? And I was worried, and had another friend who lived in a co-op and realized that co-op would be a very good environment, and the Sandy Hill Housing Co-op ended up being perfect. Has that courtyard. He grew up in the courtyard. Our unit overlooked the courtyard. In fact, my office where I was doing my schoolwork was right over the courtyard, so he could play out there and I could see him. And it worked really well. 20 years ago anyway that we came.
Wow.
almost to the day.
Wow.
Right? Almost to the day, because we stuck around after school and waited and just acclimatized ourselves before moving down. Yeah.
Do you miss the community that you were teaching in?
I miss the life. I miss the life, and I could work there again, or I could... no, I'm not going to. Actually, that's a funny thing now.
Because you're retired.
Because I'm retired.
You like retirement?
I do. I keep thinking, oh my gosh, I have to find some work, for example, or, oh yeah, I could do that, and then thinking, well, no, the whole idea was you've retired. It's another phase of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you spend so long working.
Right.
Right?
You're used to it.
50 years, you're used to it, and it's for other retirees have mentioned that organization takes a while to wend its way out of your system, and a different form of organization come in, right? But I have visited there, and I'm going to visit a little further north. Also, my next door neighbor, Mimi Niakapo, is from the community up above where I was.
You're still in touch with
yes,
friends?
with people there and above now, through students too, through students in AESP.
Wow.
And we'll go and visit Mimi's parents for sure. We love her parents. And well, now you can drive up, right? When we went, it was fly in, fly out. I really like that. Just to feel that you're cut off, that was just great. That was the best feeling in the world for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Why was it?
Well, no one could actually really get to you. That was delicious, particularly coming off of, all of those years and that type of thing. This is new and really new, and silence and vast expanses. As I say, I do come from the nearer north, but north all the same, and so I have that rugged terrain in my soul. I feel really good with vast expanses of trees and everything. I realized up in the Arctic, because we had a project up there for 6 years that involved a fair amount out of CIE, Center for Initiatives in Education, and I realized I don't quite feel the same about vast expanses of ice. It's different. It's very, very different. I love it. Right. It's exotic, but I've grown up in trees, and even if they're skinny little trees, it's vast expanses of trees and rock and that. So I was very comfortable with that. Very.
So coming back into Carleton and Ottawa, and reintegrating into this sort of lifestyle, how was your experience as a graduate student in the applied language?
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. In fact, as I was getting closer to graduating, I remember thinking, I don't want to leave here. This is wonderful. This is a really great place, and I like learning here, and I really don't want to go. And so when you look, right, 15, 16 years later, I didn't go. It was another one of those things. It wasn't planned. It was just,
there's an interesting pattern here.
Go.
There's an interesting pattern.
Well, a lot of people have laid their lives out, and they have the goal, and they work towards it, and that has not been my pattern. My pattern has been to work really hard and follow an instinct and trust that if you jiggle up the universe by sending messages out and working and not stopping and not blaming anybody for anything ever, then all this stuff has happened, right? So I've never had a lot of money. I've run into some kind of hard times financially, particularly as a musician, but I realized that it wasn't about that in this lifetime. It really wasn't. If I had any intention of making a lot of money, I was probably going to have to trade a certain amount of happiness and luck for that, and just kind of keep going with it. And sure enough, fate's been really kind to me.
It sounds like you've had an adventure. I know
what a nice way of phrasing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're going with your gut, your instinct, right?
I realize I also, after having played music, and which is a very self-centered way of being, right? That is the epitome of self-centeredness.
How so? I know what you mean, but elaborate.
Well, your responsibility in your work is to a bar owner, an agent, and a drinking clientele, or eating and drinking clientele. So you want to do a good job. When you leave and go home, you're looking after yourself. You have, you might party and you have friends and that type of thing, and you can care about them, but a sense of responsibility, how can I say? Well, just a meaning of life, right? That your life has meaning and depth. So I got that out of my system. It was out and gone. Even playing now, it's very, very different than it was then, right? It's not the same thing. So with the exception of that part, before and after that, I really saw, I come from a family of workaholics, basically, and I really saw working hard and doing a good job and then having my child. It was like, okay, you now are not at the center of your universe. In fact, that person, their stability and that type of thing, they are. So my only worry was, would I be able to make enough money to support him? And then when the relationship split up, it was like, okay, am I going to be able to do this on my own? And like I say, so many very luck beyond really my talent level. I've often been thrown in at a level where I had to scramble to keep up. Really, yes, I really feel that way. And learned a lot and kind of always managed to keep my head above water. But, I've taught with some people who are just the best teachers. I admire everything that they do. I really learnt so much from them. And when I was an athlete, I coached along with other coaches who were phenomenal coaches and athletes. I was, I think, like kind of average, really average. So I've really been in the company of gifted people. And not refused anything because I think, well, I can't really do that, but I had to work really hard. Really hard.
When you were graduating from McGill, what were you envisioning as your, when you were thinking, about the future, what visions came to your mind, or what did you hear, what did you feel?
Save the world through athletics and sports.
Let's save the world.
Well, obviously, if people were fit, they would be happy. If they were healthy, they would be happy. And I had all the tools. Mm-hmm. And at school, my goal was to make phys ed attractive, even for the kids who hated it. Teachers were always dumping those students on me who needed a credit, and no one would have them. And I really enjoyed them. Really liked young people. Mm-hmm. And just, that's what I was going to do. I was like a missionary of physical activity.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I
was going to teach my way maybe around the world. Who knew? But that's what I was going to do.
Where do you think, you know how you got that gig in Hong Kong to perform? And you chose not to go?
Well, I was pregnant.
Right.
And it was for 6 months.
Right.
Nobody wants a 5-month pregnant guitar player playing music in their bar.
No, you're right. Do you ever have thoughts of, what if I had gone? Do you know what I mean? Because you mentioned touring New Zealand, Australia.
I'm not that kind of person. I'm really not. I don't really deal in what ifs.
Sure.
It's just it didn't happen, and this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Someone might say, and I think about it for a minute, and I go, I don't have time to think about what ifs.
Sure.
It's just, I know lots of people do, and I enjoy, that. People say, well, do you regret? Yeah. It hasn't so far. I regret the harm that I've ever done to anyone. And that's the only thing I regret, right? It's just, this led into this, and this led into that, and it all would be different. It's like the prime directive, Star Trek. If you changed any little piece, it'd all change.
Sure.
So you can't. And this overarching sense of luck, just being really lucky. To have a job at a university, Garmamie, like...
You mentioned luck, and you smile, and, there's a lot of energy in the smile when you mention luck. What's another word for it? Could it just be like timing?
Yeah. Isn't luck and timing basically probably the same thing?
I guess, but it seems to me from hearing a lot of what you're saying, that there's almost the commonality throughout all of it is like, the timing, of just being open to listening to to your voice, you know,
Keeping
to
an eye out and staying busy. That's my thing. When I run into anyone who says I can't find a this or I can't find a that, like the one question I ask is, are you really like busy at it? And are all options open? For example, if you can't find a job in Ottawa, like I might not say it to someone, but my thought is, well, then you're going to have to move. I mean, hello.
right.
You know what I mean? You don't bang your head against the wall for too long before you look to where you're going to have some success, and that often leads to other successes and other contacts. And yes, that's my thing. Stay busy and open, and think forward. I get the feeling that you probably do understand that, but you can vision things and go through any visioning process or meditative process that's an active visioning, where you engage all your senses in the act of thinking and putting ahead, and then things happen that often kind of resemble what you were thinking. Not exactly, but they do.
So it's as if you're almost, I know this might sound a little crazy, but almost like time traveling, almost shifting and seeing where you.
Well, it's just called visioning or
Right.
active meditation or that type of thing. People use it to cure illnesses or to, if someone has surgery that's coming up and they're worried, well, then once again, almost all of these methodologies involve some form of going deep and activating the senses. Either going to a place like a mountaintop or your special place and hearing, feeling, seeing, thinking, and then you envision yourself after the operation well. And or like there's so many techniques and strategies, and I was really lucky at a time when I was very low, wondering if I would be able to pull all this off with Jeffrey, my son, on my own, where I went to a psychiatrist and ended up seeing that person for 10, 12 years. The first years were the most intense. After, it was kind of maintenance. It was nice to have someone who knew you, and that person was just full of these strategies. Okay, I could vibrating, pack it all up in garbage bags and then visualize the trucks coming and load it in the truck and watch it go into the distance. And if you really, rather than sit around and vibrate, actually engage in these various strategies, things happen. Our minds need to be tamed because they'll take us places that are not productive, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I can say that now, and I can say that to someone, but I've spent a lot of unproductive time worrying and have found that these are the types of things that work, right? It's not a foolish positivity. I do believe that creation responds when people tap it.
You mean,
I mean,
universe,
the
space?
creation itself, everything is in motion, right? Everything is in motion. Things appeared and things grow and pass and other things come in, and there's a creative energy and flow in the universe. And we hear every day about people who have claimed, and some really have, to have found ways of tapping that. However they use it. I don't think there's one way. I just think it is very possible. And having learned about Aboriginal spirituality and the possibilities of the medicine societies, I know people who do tap this energy, right? But I've also known some very holy people. I have a cousin who's a Carmelite nun. She's really holy. She's happy. She's a wonderfully evolved person. And when we have deep troubles, we'll call her up and say, could you put in a word? Could you pray for us? And you don't get the thing you wanted. You get something. If you know what I mean? Like, I don't believe in prayer to get, please give me this.
Right.
That's minor. That's small, right? The bigger thing is, I want to participate. And, you know, I see this is something that I have in mind for myself, or even just a better state. And things happen. There's so much of it that goes on in the world, it's hard to deny, right? That you can tap creative force and a good heart and a good mind.
What a great combination, eh?
Yeah. That's a Mohawk, a good heart and a good mind. And the first time I heard it, I just about fell on the floor. Because I was having trouble figuring out how to, like, at times I'd be cerebral and other times emotional, and they didn't appear to be able to communicate
often. With each other.
Yeah, at times when you really needed them to, and
collaborate,
and that it just, the words themselves opened up a pathway, a good heart and a good mind. And then my Mohawk friends, one in particular who helped us set up the Aboriginal Enriched Support Program within the Enriched Support Program at CIE, she would start every meeting with a kind of Mohawk prayer. Those are prayers to creation, really, to the great mystery. I love that word. The great mystery is what it is. It's not God, and it's not male, and it's not female even. It's unknowable, right, but powerful. And it can be talked to, and would always ask that we'd be together with a good heart and a good mind. And I just thought, that's the best invocation I've ever heard to start a meeting with, to start any group with. I know people are human, and you know, pride and jealousy and all those things work their way into everything. Sure. But to have that as a premise, that's your goal. And that's why I say, you know, if things are not working, look at expanding the horizon. And no one should know that better than you.
Thank you. Patricia,
you to me epitomize having expanded horizons and added to this and added to that, and I have never thought of you as ever sitting around going, well, I don't have exactly what I want, so I'm not going to do anything. You know what I mean?
Thank you. I do want to ask you about when you began teaching at Carleton in the ESP program. How was that for you?
Terrifying.
Why? Well, how and why?
Well,
did you go in with a good heart and good mind? Obviously.
I was hoping to. I just had the master's. I didn't have a huge background like doctors do, right?
Sure.
Like they go through a process that really changes them when you do a doctorate.
Yeah, but you went through a process that really...
I did, and
you know
honestly, I was convinced that I would have something to share, but I found the students so bright. And already knew so much. And here I was new at creating curriculum in this area. So I found at that point that my showbiz training came in really handy, and the fact that I wasn't afraid of people, per se. And I learned then, someone asked me, someone really older than me at a workshop that I was facilitating, well, not older, no, but with more education than me. But just when that person found out I was retiring, said, well, that's great. Like, what would you share? And I was like, you're interested? She said, yeah, I'm really interested. What would you share? And I was like, never be afraid of someone who's smarter than you, no matter how old they are. If they're smarter than you, they're smarter than you. That doesn't really mean that much. But if you're afraid of them, you won't respond well. You know, like that's really important to just respect and encourage as best you can, you know, because I've met students who knew immediately that they were smarter than me. But we got along okay. I just, you know, I thought that was all right. That was okay. So I had to work really hard to get kind of the knowledge and the discipline and to find an area that I really liked in it. And, you know, Language and Power was a really good choice because it attracted people who were interested in power for some reason, and so it gave us some common ground.
I was a student of yours, obviously, and I really enjoyed you as a teacher and I think most people who were in your class really enjoyed being, in your presence because everyone could connect with you. You know what I mean? And
It was a good class.
it was a good class for sure, but I mean there was a sense of connecting with the teacher and not a superficial connection. I speak for myself and others, but there was a very authentic connection. You know what I mean? And it really helps, especially for first year university students transitioning into academia.
Our program is very special that way. The first year seminars give that opportunity, right, to be that way. And really, when I knew it was time to go, it was just as, when grade 13 faded out, a lot changed because a lot of your generation had done grade 13 and had somehow found themselves in some kind of conflict with teachers, for example, who didn't want to realize that you were actually university age, that you could be cut loose a lot more, that more should happen for you. So there were a lot of angry young ducks.
Sure.
And then as grade 12 started to be the norm, and then the different millennial started, a lot more whatever, right? Really nice people, really interested in a different aspect of power, which was interpersonal a lot more. It wasn't politics. It was like I couldn't care less. Very interested in media and understanding what was happening to them with media. So a lot shifted, but I really miss the old days of hammering away at the institutional power. That was really fun.
Do you think that's gone from as far as the current generation and students in universities? Are they? Well, what's your opinion?
It's a bit of a different time. Not that many people go into. It's like conflict. Even now, this is very interesting. Aboriginal students often have a hard time when told to do critical thinking and to critique a piece, because if they've grown up traditional, well, that's not what you do, particularly for someone who's older and wiser, right? And new words have to be found and that kind of thing. One year when I just said, it's really important to critique authority, and one very nice girl who really liked the class just sincerely said, why? And the whole class is with her. And I thought, I didn't used to have to explain why. People instinctively knew, right? And so I went, well, look, take race relations. If people hadn't really critiqued and demonstrated and fought, it would still be white society. And reflectively, so I realized that things are really, really changing, And the last class that I taught, honestly, it wasn't a real meeting of minds, with the exception of a couple of really political people. They wouldn't even speak out in class. And the one would come and see me, a black kid, from the projects.
Okay.
And would come in and go, oh, colonial bullshit. And I'd go, why don't you say that in class? And they'd go, well, I don't think it would be really well received.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, other people are going to come in and do stuff with you because you've got great minds and you're really balanced about, gay, race, it's all whatever. I had predicted maybe that it would be more balanced, but still really active. But things don't work that way. What they know, but they even wonder if they'll be able to do it. They have to remind themselves to maintain interpersonal contact and to not be taken over by their machines. They know that that's a possibility. See, your class, that wasn't even a thought. Right?
That was 15 years ago.
It wasn't on the horizon. Whereas now we had most of the class admitting that they were addicted and they didn't even know they had just reached for their cell phone. They literally didn't know. It wasn't an act of defiance. It was like, what are you asking me to do? Like, I can do this. I can multitask. I can listen to you and check my phone. So we did a lot of literature showing that you can't. We did. We saw videos from Harvard and we read studies that proving that you can't. And many said they actually did change some of their study habits. They realized that they weren't getting the grades because they never spent more than 2 or 3 minutes focused on anything. Right? So it didn't necessarily always help.
2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, 2 or 3 minutes on this and then on that and then on that and then on that. And they really hadn't realized that that was happening. For example, we looked at one study and someone went and replicated it. All they had to do after was go out and look at their own habits with tech for an evening or a day or whatever, and to look around the university and pick something to look at in depth. And so someone replicated the study. They went into their study hall, and they don't do this, but they opened up a movie, started watching the movie, and all of a sudden, and they were tracking. There was a radius of about 3 or 4 people on that side and back who had stopped watching the lecture and had started watching their movie. Because that's what the study showed, that there's a decrease in performance in the people around the people who are watching the movie, right? Mm-hmm. And so they enjoyed that. They liked looking at advertising because they all admitted that brands were really important to them. Back in our day, we were reading Naomi Klein and that type of thing, and people were saying brands are not good. This is not a good phenomenon, right? Now it's like part of their lives, and you have to work from there. And it works best with people who experience that also. Like, I have become yesterday's person, and if I had another 10 or 12 years of teaching, I would have changed, but I didn't really need to spend all that energy. I got along well with them and them with me, but it was like understood that we are just really, really different. I'm a nice person, and so you're safe with me, but that's it as far as really being on a wavelength like I was up until 3 years ago, say.
So you've taught at Carleton for 20 years?
No, I was a student. I guess the first class was, I'd say, 16, say. I started as a contract instructor, mm-hmm. and then also got hired by the unit on another contract, mm-hmm. Doing the Nunavut project, traveling back and forth to Nunavut.
So you've taught for 16 years?
Yeah, at Carleton.
What have those 16 years, what have they meant to you?
Because of the unit that I work in,
mm-hmm.
and we do first year programming and outreach. And our goal is to make education accessible. It's been an almost ever-growing feeling of worth. That here we are doing something worthwhile. We're totally non-competitive. No one wants to be the leader. We have to twist someone's arm off their body practically to be associate director. No one wants anyone else's job. Do you know what I mean? No one's buying for graduate students. We all teach first years, so we have been completely non-competitive in that sense. We're competitive to try and get better stuff for the unit and get grants and so that we can function. So that's been glorious. You never run into that. Like, that was the ultimate good luck, to be with colleagues who are so collegial, to have this goal which is altruistic in a sense, to be able to work with really bright young people who might have had to delay before they get into university, and then to get a chance to create the Aboriginal Enriched Support Program. Because I always had in the back of my mind while I was doing this, when I was in Wamingji, I would see students I taught in secondary 4 and 5 go down and be back within 3 months. They couldn't find the bus. They couldn't find the registrar's office. I ran into a person who I hadn't taught, but I taught all of his, many of his brothers. He had a lot of brothers. I ran into him at the admin building, and just how'd it go? Well, not so well. Well, I have to sort out my transcript. My mom died last year, and then I remembered, I said, oh yes, of course, I knew that your mom had died. Yeah, and I just went home and I didn't drop my classes, and I got all these Fs now, and I just went, come and talk to us. You're not in first year. And Susan Burho, he was in history, and Susan Burho had been in history, and she took him on under her wing, and he ended up using our coaches. She coached him, and it became evident in the union, it was in our unit, not just me, that we could really do something for Aboriginal people, because this is one of the main causes of leaving first year, is that they can't negotiate the system, let alone make sense of it. And so when we got our Nunavut project, and we were doing something with Nunavut Arctic College and Carleton, it wasn't CIE, it was Carleton, our director then, Dennis Forces, went, let's see if we can make it so. Let's see if we can start something in the ESP that would be for Aboriginal students. And we started with 4 students. And now apparently we're just about full, which is great for us. Full is between 30 and 35 and a few second years. And an Aboriginal instructor, and an Aboriginal coordinator, and an Aboriginal assistant coordinator, and a couple of Aboriginal facilitators. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I do actually think, wow, this is great. I feel the same way as when I left Wominji, and the last concert saw girls playing instruments, all these girls on the stage, all these kids on the stage. It wasn't like that when I had come in, and any music teacher had come in would have been able to do it. It's not because it was me, if you know what I mean. It was that I had a chance to run with that. And so once again, I was given a chance to run with this and get this off the ground, right? What a lucky break. And that's why I can sit here and go, whoa, I have always called myself a lumberjack in academia. I am not sophisticated. Compared to so many of the people I work with, even, I look at their level of academic sophistication, and I go, thank you. Thank you for putting me here in all of that, I really am grateful, because there are so many brilliant teachers and scholars who can't find work, right?
But maybe a lot of them can't connect.
Times changed. Things have changed, right? Money has dried up, and that was just right place, right time, right at that time. A little bit of tenure, all of a sudden permanent. And my son got a chance to go to university, funded by my job.
That's awesome.
And because I had been worried sick, when you're a musician, you don't think of starting a plan for your kid, right?
He's university educated.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why, I wake up some mornings these days and I'm disoriented.
Because you're so used to the pattern,
really disoriented, maybe a little frightened, maybe a little angry, and
why angry?
There's no reason, and there's no even need for a reason. People have told me you can't predict how you're going to feel, and this is another thing that I learned working with Aboriginal people. They're in so much pain, like you learn how to work with survivors of post-traumatic stress disorder, and you realize that, okay, life can actually be pain, and you can have days worth of pain, and you just live it and go on doing what you do and try not even lay it on anyone. It's not necessary to understand. It's necessary to get through the day in as good a heart and mind as you can. And so if I get those feelings now in general, I hope that I'm alone. When you're with a partner, there's a tendency to blame, right? You have to really pull yourself away from that. But if you're alone, and I just go, okay, Mama said there'd be days like this, which was that old song, but it's just people have said. So I'm just going to go about my business as if I didn't feel that way and see how long it lasts. And invariably, it doesn't last that long.
What role does... two questions. Give me 3 words that describe... I'm putting you on the spot here, obviously. Give me 3 words.
I like those 3 words.
Give me 3 words that describe your time at Carleton, and then from there, tell us about your band and how you're back at your creativity now. You're back at performing.
Performing, yes. I'm not the most creative person in the world. I find that the other Jen and Carmel in the band are extraordinarily creative. I'm a bit of a technician, getting better, doing things better, and they're like, let's just do it, right? So it's a good combination. So 3 words about Carleton. Well, it was so stimulating, like worthwhile, a tremendous sense of worthwhileness, and a great sense of belonging. I actually don't cry very much, but I tear up walking down the stairs the last time as a full-time.
Wow.
Right? Because the whole buildings, grounds, it was like mine, you know.
It was your home.
I belonged to it.
Right.
I went there every day and really, you know, like everyone else, rail at administration, and yet we got a lot of support from administration for the Aboriginal project. Once it really, they saw that it was established, it ends up being one of the second oldest Aboriginal thing on campus. And it has a lot of respect. The current director, Rodney, coordinator, he's in with admin. It'll go far under him. And, you know, even did the right thing. You hand your job over to an Aboriginal person. You transfer. Anybody working in the Aboriginal field should have replacing themselves in mind, you know? So those were my words. It was, I belonged. It was a wonderful sense. Always thinking, as you say, as I said, I'm a lumberjack here, but people seem to accept me, so that's okay. All right. Right? And it's really worthwhile. Our unit is worthwhile. Right? And it was exciting and stimulating.
Are you still going to be involved in any capacity as far as...
I'm keeping one little program, the high school mentorship program.
Okay.
And I love that program. So it'll be like 6 hours a week.
Cool.
Right? And so that's just one little toe in the door with that program. It still needs a bit of development. And I think maybe we'll try and create, as Rachel has, people graduating into actually running it the way facils do. The senior facils now actually really run quite a bit of it. She's developed a cadre. And I think that's the way it should go, because it is off campus. It draws a lot of attention from the coordinator, and it's always been a bit like, so when there were 2 of us, you know, our unit hired my replacement 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so the dean collaborated in that so that we could afford to have 2 well-paid people coordinating the CIE so that it would be a smooth transition. So then it was easy to run it. So I'm keeping that little one. But honestly, it really, you know, I know it's time to move on. I was in the other day and listening to a couple of the troublesome things that happen as you're admitting, you know, always, and thinking, wait a minute, that isn't my problem. It really isn't. I don't need to be anxious about it. I would say if it was me, there's going to be trouble there, but I don't know anymore because it's a different regime.
Sure.
And it might not be trouble. It's someone else's vision now. Right? And I really feel kind of good about that. So we had a lesson. We had a little rough spot in the unit, and I think I had defined myself by that job. Particularly, I had been really alone for 7 years, 8 years after when my marriage broke up. It was me and Jeffrey, and so I put everything that I didn't put into him into that job, really in order to develop it too, so it would be our sustenance. But when we had that little rough spot, I realized that it was my life and that I had to do something about that. No one's job should be their life unless they're in a convent, because when that goes wrong, everything goes wrong.
Sure.
Right? You have to have a separate life with stuff in it that you like to do. So that was a very good lesson. So it makes this part easier. Otherwise, I might be a bit more clutchy, about letting go.
You're back in the performing world.
Well, yes, and that's really funny too. Remember I told you at Boys Farm at Shawbridge Youth Centres, I met up with some people and we started to play. Jen, like 12 years ago or something now, or 10 years ago, or 12, Jen and I and a whole bunch of us were at something called Spring Conference, and we had brought our guitars, and Jen was just starting. And I taught her a few more chords, and we started playing, and we played together.
Right.
And after a while, we played out with her dad and her brother, and then we did a few things on our own, and then we picked up Mike Barker from Linguistics, the language lab guy, and we had a little unit going. I don't even remember if we had a name. And I had a garage choir at the co-op as well. Garage band, garage choir. We were rough, but a lot of fun, called the Bloomin Divas.
Okay.
And then we brought Carm, and Jen was in the Bloomin Divas, and we brought Carm into the Bloomin Divas. And then I had to, what I really wanted was a band where everyone was responsible for their own stuff, not a choir role where the choir leader does the arranging and that kind of thing. Because I was teaching so hard, I didn't find it easy to arrange. If I'd just been doing that, I could arrange, but all of my concentration was going into teaching. So we let that kind of go. We're all still friends, and we sing together sometimes, and started Elizabeth Riley's traveling road show type of thing. And then we would play at open stages and this and that. And then Mike left. He didn't want to work as hard as you have to work in a band, right? At relationships and just repertoire. You have to practice a lot. And then we picked up Sarah, who's a banjo player, and that we have continued. Everyone has really busy lives, and the reason that it works is that we all have to recognize when someone's stressed and traveling for work and that kind of thing. We can't do what a band is doing that doesn't have day jobs, right? But it's really gratifying to watch the songs come together, to work on original material. It gives me something to practice for. I'm addicted to practicing music.
How many times a week would you practice?
Oh, the band would practice once a week.
Okay. But you yourself,
Yes,
practice?
just addicted to it. I love it. I just, it's my greatest pleasure.
You started very young. It's what?
Yeah, with the crowd behind me, but now I don't even have to put them there because, they've been there, right? They're in my head now. So, that's, I look forward to, after the summer is kind of chaotic, to being able to say, okay, I'm going to have a practice schedule. It's touch and go, though. Age is weird, right? Like, I have really devastated wrists with arthritis, and I have to have some surgeries. So now I can't practice endlessly.
Wow.
I have to practice a bit, nice and that kind of thing, and learn to practice smart, very smart.
As opposed to practice hard?
Yeah, practice smart, right?
Yeah.
And I just learned recently, there are studies that show that for both sports and music, when you're at a certain level, if you practice it mentally, you get to the same place.
Really?
Sports the same.
So there's, I think, sports psychology.
If you practice it and
Mental
can
training.
do it, the whole thing, if you can play the whole song and see every note, and that's hard, you have to forge patterns, then you can play it. So I plan to do a lot more work on that, and maybe learn a new instrument that doesn't involve bending your wrists that much. Maybe lap steel.
Recently, you've played at the Westfest. How was that?
You know, it was just career high in many ways, although I have played at a few folk festivals, big ones as well, but as the group with our original songs.
Right.
And Westfest, many of them do. Westfest has a reputation for taking good care of you. They make you feel very, very special the minute you hit the gate, right? You have people carrying your stuff and giving you something to drink and eat and carrying your stuff on stage and helping you check.
How did the audience respond to?
Well, our video shows that they seem to be enjoying themselves, right? I think they did. And the director of the festival, she came over after and said that was really good. The crowd enjoyed it. It was fun. I came out to watch it, and it was. And I said to her, "You're not just saying that. I think of a mistake I made and a mistake someone else made." She says, "I never just say that."
Yeah.
Elena Martin.
The director.
Yeah. So that was nice too. It was just. And I just went by the Chinese church down the street, and there's still Westfest posters on their bulletin board, and so our name is the last one. And it's like, yeah, that's just great. People work very, very hard. There's a lot of musicians who work really, really hard and haven't played at Westfest yet. It's another aspect of just really great luck and us being ready for it.
Are you guys going to be doing more touring? What's the plan?
Listen, you would probably like this based on some of the other things I said. Last fall or late summer, we got together and had a visioning process of what we would like to see ourselves doing given the restrictions that we're under. Every single one of our visions came true.
Damn.
And they ended with Westfest. So we're laughing, saying we're all taking the summer off. At the end of the summer, we're going to get together. We're going to have another visioning process to see what we do next.
That's very cool.
Yeah, scary kind of, but it's great. I really believe in visioning.
You guys have some good vibes amongst the collective, like all four members. Yeah,
we work at it.
If you're pulling all this energy and you're envisioning and you're executing, that's good. That's a good team dynamic.
Yeah. Having been around the block that way, I've seen how bands disintegrate, and I really know and how that can happen. And for it not to happen, particularly with all our disparate lives and busy, Jen with her child and her doctorate, Sarah with CUPE and traveling all the time, and really busy, Carm with her art and her job. Just no pressure. We can't put any pressure. Our only pressures can be creative. Sometimes if we disagree, we'll lock horns over how this is going to go. And we have a principle, really. If it's someone's song and they really have a clear vision of it, then we'll back off and try it. But not before saying, I think this might sound better. And we'll try things, right? But that's where we might get the most heated even, and even think. Like I remember one that I hadn't even said that I had written it too. It was Carm's song, but we had co-written it. And it took a while before I finally went, you know what, like, I actually wrote this too. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner, and I would really like to at least hear how it sounds like this. You know what I mean?
How did Carm react to that?
Well, it wasn't Carm, it was everybody. And Carm went, yes, of course you did, okay. And the others went, oh, yeah, well, let's try it. But it was my thing. I was getting a little, like a little neurotic about it, but it was my fault that I was getting neurotic about it. Because the principle is we have to feel free enough to say, well, not like that, like this. And, we've gone around for a good long time sometimes with no one being prepared to give in. And that's funny. At that point, I'll often sit back because most of the time it's not that important to me. This one it was, but most of the time, and see how we're going to resolve this, right? And we've got people who are really used to doing group work. who are used to doing this in teams. So we all have the skills. It's just when you get people who have these skills, whether we choose to use them or not, and so far, so good. Yeah.
Patricia, do you have any last words to share? I mean, first and foremost, congratulations on retiring. And
long enough you do.
Sorry, yeah. You're an amazing teacher, you know, and I think Carleton's going to miss you. And tell us, do you have any last closing words and anything?
Closing words about this? Well,
whatever you want.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to what's next, what projects are next. Sometimes you're so busy that it's impossible to even envision what's just sitting out there. And then when you have some time, go, wow, you know, it might be, you know, going to Africa for 3 months to work in a school. Wow. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff out there. And so I would say to everyone, just it's not like if you're not a planner, sometimes life throws bricks in your way and your plan didn't come through, then you're all disappointed. It's just keep throwing the vision out and trust creation, that things can happen for you. And then when they don't blame. No one gets anywhere blaming. Don't judge. Learn about the 7 grandfather teachings. And the first one is don't judge. And if you can live your life not judging, you can really go far, type of thing. And you can be a lot happier for it. And people will really like to have you around as well. So that's my advice. And the other, for Elizabeth Riley Band, we've all written new songs. And we're really anxious to bring our new repertoire out to the public. And stay tuned. We have lovely vocals. And we're all really working hard.
Where can we find you guys online?
Online, Facebook, Elizabeth Riley Band, and our website, Elizabeth Riley Band. And you can actually hear our CD. And we're saving money for our next CD.
Very cool. Looking forward to hearing it and seeing you guys live.
Can I say one more thing? Sure. And a lot of where we are right now, we really credit you for having brought us into the media. And we are so grateful that you would be interested in us as a group and that you have spent all that time. And I really hope that we score something really major so that we can promote your name and give you the reward that you're due.
Yeah, I love working with you guys. You know, for me, it's just about having fun. And thank you.
Thank you.
For more information, visit garmamie.com. That's GARMAMIE.com. GARMAMIE.com.